All right. Welcome to the good stuff, the very big episode 52. We just realised it's been a year.
Happy birthday.
Thank you, ish. I guess happy birthday to us.
Happy birthday to the good stuff.
Yes.
Damn, we made it.
Yeah. I mean, I knew this was coming up. I just didn't realise it was this one. I thought maybe it was 53 or 51, but we did that one last week. So.
We did. Yeah. Thought we'd skipped over the birthday.
Sweet.
Nice. Awesome.
All right.
Thank you to all of the OG listeners over year one of the podcast.
And new listeners and
new
old
listeners too.
And
yeah.
It's good. We do appreciate you all.
We've got some birthday ambient background noise as well with a ride-on mower just going around casually.
Yeah, callback to episode 22.
Yep.
From Madeira, the windy lawnmower stuff with GG.
Now there's a chopper flying overhead as well.
Yeah.
So we're just going to keep stacking the ambient noise.
And then the shark chopper, for those of you that aren't
That's it.
fay with West Australian beach culture. So we have a helicopter that will just check that we're not about to get eaten by great white sharks, because these beaches are patrolled by great white sharks every now and again. Generally they're a little bit out of the way, but sometimes they're there. More often not, we see the dolphins as opposed to the sharks, but sharks are generally fine. Don't worry about them.
Dolphin watch is a regular thing on this show, so
exactly. Well,
we'll
last week we had to pause for dolphins pretty early on, right? It's that sort of time of year though, where the sea is just like flat as a pancake.
Yeah,
it's nice.
So what do we want to get into today?
So I think we were going to talk about like organizational structure and AI, I guess, right? So we kind of last week we brought up Block's new thing. So Jack had co-written an article with a Sequoia guy, and like we kind of vaguely looked at it beforehand, but not really got into it. And it maps like a lot of things that we're kind of dealing with. So we figured we don't have an answer to this one, I think would be the right way of saying it, right? But it's an area that we've been thinking about a lot and experimenting with. Just looking at different ways for how you can encode all this stuff. So I thought maybe we'd get into that, because I've been somewhat surprised as I've been doing more work inside like flight deck and tower and airspace and the autopilots and like all the various different bits. I'm like, there's a lot of stuff here, and I keep wondering, am I just like mid-curving this and making it too complex? And I'm like, no, but each of these bits has its reason to exist, and I think they all make sense. Yeah. So I think it works, but yeah, I think it might be interesting to just talk about it out loud and see where we're at. But so where did you get with like?
Well, there's a bit there where I'm just like, there is like a bigger, like a more meta question around like what the future of the company is. How do organizations get structured? Why are they structured the way they are? How do they need to be structured from an AI perspective? I mean, so Jack did talk about this during the week. I haven't listened to it. I'm only aware from like seeing snippets here and there that he has spoken about it, and he's usually like well ahead of the curve.
So is he actually like, he's spoken, like there's a video?
Yeah, I think there's a podcast. Because
I've
I've just seen a couple of people tweet about it, and I think he's usually ahead of the curve on this stuff. But I'm sure this also like pretty heavily informed some of the strategy around what they've done at Block, reducing headcount, changing the role structure, the role dynamics. And I think ultimately it does come back to this question that he's been looking at around like the role of the hierarchy is very much like a byproduct of the way organizations have been structured in the past as a means of basically relaying information amongst like a broad base of teams. I think that's kind of like the gist of what I'd gotten from the limited sample space of information I'd seen about it. But I thought actually really good, interesting topic. This probably dovetails quite nicely with a lot of the stuff that we're working through as well. And I think the other aspect of this that was quite interesting is that like AI essentially becomes like the kind of the center of the organizations, the beating heart, and then the individuals in those like compressed role structures move to the edge. So essentially a bounded circle around that AI, which I think is interesting because like businesses, like everything that we do inside the business is generating an artifact that you and I as individuals can't wrap our heads around the totality of. You know, like we can remember the last like 15 messages we've sent to each other, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, beyond that, it's like the context is like a little a little hazy. It's hard to remember
As
what
we
we
see
talked
in these
about.
episodes, right? There's times where we can barely remember
Yeah.
what we just said ourselves,
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
or what the other person was
Yeah.
talking about. But
It's like-
it's easy to get distracted.
It's interesting that like every one of those artifacts is essentially like informing how the business works, what it does well, what it doesn't do well, and being able to wrap intelligence around that as like the kind of the product essentially
Yeah.
that you can talk to, so you can better understand how does this big business function, what does it need to do better. I think that is like a really interesting like future dynamic for the organization, for the firm. Like I think that is quite novel.
Yeah.
I also think it's going to be incredibly hard for a lot of companies to achieve that just because of the kind of change management involved. But I think for us it's perfect,
Yeah.
you know. And this also, like, part of the reason I was thinking about it, because it also dovetails from like the story that was big last week, which I can't remember if we talked about on the pod, about the couple of guys, the brothers who started the GLP-1 company. So I think it was just the two of them plus OpenClaw. And what was the revenue in the? I can't even remember. It was like
I think they
a
were
few hundred
projecting
million, right?
it to like 1.4 billion.
Yeah, that was
would have been
revenue,
like
right?
annual if it carries on.
If it carries on, right?
Yeah.
It was, but they were already in the
But
hundreds
yeah.
of millions, I think.
Yeah,
by
yeah.
memory. So that.
Oh yeah, I mean,
is
I'd be fine.
Yeah.
Like I'd probably just call it a day. In all honesty. Just buy
Well
some
done.
Bitcoin and
Well done, guys.
I'm
So
done.
it's like that flatter structure. You just don't need the big hierarchies and
yeah.
the bigger teams.
I mean, so I think one observation is this reminds me of an early analogy on the podcast, maybe episode, I don't know, 5, 7, something like this, where
That's
we
good
talked
guess.
about like this is the haul pack analogy, and we said like, well, why is it that a haul pack, which is the big, Tonka truck that you see on mining sites,
Oh, yeah.
like why is it the size that it is? And they say, well, it's the size that it is because of humans, weirdly, which might not seem immediately obvious, but like any bigger than that, like the maintenance costs and build costs of the thing just scale badly, and any smaller than that, and you need to hire more humans, so you end up with this like weird local maxima where that just happens to be the right size for that sort of thing, so they're that size. And I think it's the same. This is what I got from like Jack's point of view. He was talking about in his initial note that came out of the Sequoia guy, was they started talking about like military and like how organizations developed, but really it was about, look, organizations look the way they look because of humans and human capacity. So what they're trying to say then is, well, obviously if humans are no longer the default unit of work and intelligence in that business,
yeah.
not only is there an opportunity for the organization to look different, but it's also probably supposed to look different, because it was only ever looked that way because of humans. And I think this is an interesting area to explore and try and figure out, well, what is the tension there of like, well, what does it look like, and how big should it be, and like what are the things that should be done, and how do the human components of that work alongside the AI components? Because I don't have this intuition. I don't kind of like necessarily the one AI
Yeah.
that is in the middle type thing.
The one AI to rule them all.
And more I'm just like, I don't, it's like, it's a thing that I'm playing out at the moment. It's like, do I actually want 1,000 individual agents that all know little bits of stuff and focus on their role?
Yeah.
Do I want one agent that knows everything? Do I want a command agent that then dispatches stuff to 1,000 agents? Like, it's really not obvious, and they all seem to, in practice, they all have their downsides. Now they can all get stuff done, and so they can all do like the OpenClaw parlor trick, as it were, of just like, you can get more done than you might expect very quickly and very cheaply, but then you're like, I'm still hitting these sort of problems, so like, how do I resolve it correctly? But yeah, I think it really is that haul pack thing of like, just if you remove the driver from the haul pack doesn't need to be that big. It could be bigger, could be smaller. It's probably going to be smaller, like, because then the maintenance costs come down and you don't have the hiring thing. But so like, what's the local maxima of the organization? Is it lots of hierarchy? Is it no hierarchy? Is it some hierarchy?
Yeah.
Like, the block bet seems to be around some, where it's like, all right, we're going to have like pods, and there's because like the organization like does stuff. This is like where I feel like,
But Jack has talked about essentially having the people that remain in the business directly report to him. So in that respect, he's flattened the flow, like the information flows in the business. Like there aren't like necessarily these other gatekeepers that would traditionally exist.
yes,
So, and I also should point out, like, I don't know if he necessarily was referring to like, you know, one dominant AI in the middle, or if it was just like, because I think his language was, and I'm working off like very fragmented info, was its intelligence in the middle, like how that is, you know, structured, how that's developed. I don't really know.
the way they kicked off the Sequoia like piece with him was it was all like predicated on the information flows.
Yeah.
And like just like what capacity a person had to manage, like how information would have to flow through the business. So I could imagine that it's more around what I would probably be more in line with, which would be like there's almost like a central repository of data or an understanding of stuff which is common for that organization. Like it's like when you're trying to like draw the bounds around a cell in biology. It's like, well, why this? Like why is this the right place to have the membrane as opposed to somewhere else? And like why is the mitochondria in the cell versus outside the cell versus it being the cell, like sort of thing. Like it's all kind of weird to figure out what comes in, what doesn't. Why is like the skin just not one cell?
Yeah.
Because that would be bad for other reasons, I'm sure. But it would make sense that like the purpose of an organization is to do a thing.
Yeah.
And that thing might be complex. But in the doing of that thing, there will be activities that need to happen, and there is like data and information that tells you how to do it, that tracks the work, that like oversees the work, that proves the work happened, that keeps records of what you've done. Like there's a set of stuff based around these like little work scopes, and that would have to be that feels like a cell membrane type thing of like, all right, there's a scope of stuff here that needs to happen. And then when I would think about something like I don't know, like Block as an organization, where you're like, but then clearly there's a bunch of those.
Yeah.
You know, like it's even at a very high level, like just having Tidal, which is like your Spotify competitor, and like the machines that take your card payments.
Yeah.
They're different businesses.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like so you then wonder like, well, is there any? So what's the common like data between those things even? So you kind of like, is that even just like different cells in the same body, or is it just different bodies? Like it's not. It wouldn't be obvious to me that those two things even belong in the same business. I'd say they probably shouldn't be.
Yeah, but they're probably not. They may only be from a cap table perspective, but you know, I'm sure they're probably like housed in a different space, and you know, their own teams, their own structures,
I'm
and
sure they
you know,
are.
like that's.
But then, so what's the point in them being in the same cap table?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that's the bit that I'm
Yeah.
getting at. Like because it feels like if you're going to be reassessing these things,
Yeah.
at some point you've got to say, well, why are we doing two separate things? Because you still at some level have Jack overseeing it. So there's got to be some common vision that says why you have a music streaming platform.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, and I think the way it's been articulated in the past is like, you know, they want to, like Square, when it started, was all about giving power to like small business owners and owners of stuff, so that they could take payments and they could do stuff and they could own that like relationship with the customer and all this sort of stuff. And I think they expanded that into the music production and streaming area, because they said that some of the streaming platforms tended to be a bit too extractive and stuff, and they were going to give like a better deal for artists. So it was kind of analogous to the thing, but
I mean, that's one reason.
yeah,
I'm sure there's probably also like, you know, acquiring distribution and stuff like that as well.
possibly.
Yeah, but who knows? I mean, when were those made as well? Were they like 2020, 2021, 2020? I don't actually know.
Pre-2020.
Was it pre-20? Yeah, okay.
I would guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if
But
the
like that sort of area, like
Yeah.
era, not.
yeah. Like I was wondering if it's still a ZERP era type thing. which could also have driven a lot of that stuff. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure, and this is actually part of the challenge, right? It's like you're going to have a lot of unwinding to do, like in any big organization.
Yeah.
Getting back to first principles around this stuff is going to be like really messy and challenging. And you kind of need to get back to first principles, I think, in some respects. Like, what is the reason we exist, and how best do we serve that purpose, and why are we even doing it? You know, that's like the meta question that keeps popping up in my head. It's like, why are most of these businesses actually in business?
Yeah.
You know, you can't just keep saying it's to like increase shareholder value, you know, the stock like textbook answer for enterprise. Like, just there's got to be like a really good reason to do this stuff now, because otherwise I think your view on like the kind of hyper fragmentation of a lot of these businesses and just becoming smaller and more niche and geographically located, or like essentially maybe co-located, but yeah, more geographically focused as well. I honestly see that being a more real possibility.
I mean, I'm aware that is not the standard view.
No.
But I'm also aware that I am correct. So I'm just sort of waiting for everybody to catch up.
Yeah.
We're gonna have some fun.
That's it.
But I mean, I think it's true though. Like, I do think that is the correct way this goes, because it, like, to me, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Like, but I think it sort of does if, you know, capital is restricted and people are restricted and you need to fight and compete for people to do work. But as soon as like somebody else can do the thing more focused and more direct, like, I could sort of see it, like, say something like Block, you know, like, let's say you just retain them as being, they're just like lots of independent business units in between them, but it's not obvious that there's any great synergies that you get from also being part of that. So I think maybe there is, just because of, you know, let's say it could be a distribution thing that I just miss. It's not an area I'm that good at. But my general view is that you drive more towards segmentation of these things, and you stop having, like, I don't know, there's always been this like shared service, or, you know, like one combined HR type reason to have a bigger company, and I'm like, I don't see why you would have, like, that just doesn't seem like it would be useful anymore. Yeah, like, if the shared service is automated, it doesn't need to be shared. It may as well be specific to what you want to do.
But there's bigger in terms of hierarchy and headcount, and then there's bigger in terms of like revenue and enterprise value. And as you can see with the two brothers with their GLP-1 business, you know, like two guys with a near like, I don't know, let's say it's $500,000 roughly in revenue, like that's obscene. You know, that I mean obscene in like
$500,000.
Sorry, $500 million. That's obscene. Like, and I mean obscene in like an impressive way.
Yeah.
Like that's crazy. Like in the past, to get to that, you need, like, you know, just imagine the hierarchies that exist in that business. Like, you know, all of those layers of humans like have to scale in order to support the scale of the enterprise. And that's the bit that I think, like, you could still end up with a lot of big companies, but, you know, they're much flatter org units, like 2, 3, 5, 10 people, you know. And that's my question for Block, is like, how do you arrive at that number? You know, like, you've determined we need to cut, what was it, 40%? Is that the right number? Is it the right number for now? What's the optimal
it's probably
number?
A good start, I imagine.
Yeah.
And then
how do you work that out? You know, there's a bunch there. And so, yeah, I just don't know what this stuff like looks like when you get back to first principles and you're like, okay, well, we're delivering this particular service and we can now do a lot of that with AI, and we can support these processes at the edge.
Yeah.
Do we need 20,000 people in the business to do that? Probably not.
Yeah.
Which kind of then goes against a little bit of what we were talking about the other week. Was like, oh no, you know, we probably don't see widespread job loss or anything. I'm not even suggesting that results in job loss. Maybe it's just like shifting opportunity around, and, you know, flattening roles or changing roles or combining roles.
Yeah.
There's a bunch
it's
of
more
that.
just like changed organizations, right?
I think so. Yeah.
I think there'll be as many jobs because I think we just make jobs for people. You know?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
even if we're all just influencers to each other.
Yeah.
Like, it's,
Yeah. The nature of it changes, but yeah, it's like
so
the way the work is actually being done is obviously changing. That's the bit that's like changing pretty quickly. But then it's like what are the structures around how that work gets done that also change?
yeah.
And then that essentially morphs into this broader question of like, once the structure of the work has changed, what's the structure of the vehicle that supports the work? And that's the bit that I'm like, okay, that's...
So there was a book like a few years ago, I remember listening to this, where there's a guy called Per Byland, which I think is like a Mises Institute guy, and he'd taken some of the work on like the theory of the firm and then like adapted it to a modern age. And I'll shout out Alex, friend of the pod, here, because I feel like last time I talked about this in front of people, he was like, "Oh, you've got slightly the wrong name of the person."
Yeah.
Sorry, Alex. Zoom out, Alex. But like, the kind of core concept that I was left with from hearing him talk was that like people form organisations to get stuff done, where the costs of doing it outside your organisation. That's kind of weird.
There's lots of ambient noise today.
Someone playing with their Nokia mobile phone.
Yeah.
Where the costs of doing it outside the organisation are heavier than the cost of doing it internally.
Yeah.
And that's why you define the boundary in a particular place. It's just, all right, it would cost me more to go and get somebody else to do this bit, so this is a bit that I will keep internally, instead of having like a market provide that service for me. Is the idea. And that kind of makes sense to a point. And then I think where AI can impact that is there's so much stuff that the cost to do things internally drops massively, but also the cost to coordinate with external people drops massively.
Yeah.
There's going to be more coordination stuff. So it's really like, I don't know where it plays out, but I can see that as being quite an important piece to say, right, well, there's an economic argument here of you need to do a thing.
Yeah.
And so you'll have like some unit that does the minimal amount of thing that you can provide into the world.
Yeah.
That you do it at a cost where for somebody else to replicate it, it's probably just easier to get it from you.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
They feel like they're going to be smaller units.
Yeah, because like right now a lot of that bloat exists internally in order to push that information around. You know, like whether you call that like a back office or support type thing, I don't know. Like I feel like there's an element in every person's job which is just I need to make sure that this piece of information flows to the right person in the business.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe this was where I was thinking about what Jack was saying, you know, like if you can then query all of the artifacts in the business, if you have an intelligence layer that's wrapped around that, it's like all of a sudden everyone in the business just knows everything that's going on inside the business.
Or could know.
Or could know in theory, right? And I think that becomes like quite useful because then you don't have these structured hierarchies that are designed purely to push information around.
But even that, it's not obvious that like that intelligence should exist inside the business as opposed to just publicly. Like a lot of the stuff that you need to know like has already been solved in 100 places before this.
Yeah,
so
true.
does it need to be solved particularly in that way inside your business, or like?
Yeah, maybe not. But maybe
does your
inside
business need to
block.
be so big? Well, I mean that's I don't. My guess
I
is the
don't
block
know.
just never needs to be that big.
Yeah.
And so this is just going to be a constant like winding back of stuff.
Yeah.
To get somewhere to go, because your problem is like, oh my god, we're so big, we don't know what's going on. And you're like, well, that's more of a problem than it is a benefit.
That exists in
You know,
small business
it's
too,
just-
though. Like the part of the challenge in small business is just people not knowing because they're not talking, they're not communicating to each other. And you would think there's only a handful of people here. You guys should know everything that's going on. We got a fire truck behind us, so they're doing some testing.
Is that what it is? Well, I mean, I guess we should be thankful it's not
yeah.
a much louder test.
You know.
In that case.
If they're here just in case there's a fire in the van, obviously.
Well, we do have lithium
rapid
batteries.
response,
so, you know,
yes.
who
Rapid
knows?
response team at the beach. But you know what I mean? Like that. This is like a struggle even in smaller companies. Yeah. So I feel like maybe that is the reason for it. But I don't know. Like you could be right. Like a lot of this stuff just exists publicly anyway, because most businesses are like the nth version of something similar. I don't know if that's necessarily the case with Block. I'm sure there's a bunch of proprietary stuff that exists in there that they probably want to, you know, they want to have some like informational controls around potentially. But again, like if you're reducing the scale of the team, you know, you presumably trust everyone inside that structure anyway.
Yeah.
So again, the need for those kind of controls disappears as well, internally at least. Whereas you have those controls inside big business. You know, there's stuff that CEO of a bank knows that, you know, an analyst doesn't know. And the analyst can't just go and get in touch with the CEO of a bank. That's the problem, you know.
But also, like, I don't know, like, I feel like this is where AI does attack stuff, is that the CEO can know the stuff that the analyst knows, or it can just, you can like momentarily just gain these skills by working. It's like that bionic human approach of like, all right, I don't have this skill, but I can have this skill if I talk to this particular agent, which also has a bunch of data, and so on. But I mean, it does feel that like, it seems fairly obvious to me that AI is going to make companies smaller in the sense that they're going to have less people. I mean, in terms of like revenue and stuff, it's hard to say how you're ever going to compare them, because it could just be that revenue collapses. It could be that nominally shoots up through the roof. But like, what are we talking about here? There's a lot of other things that are going to affect that. So I think you end up with less people. I think coordination just is an easier problem. Yeah. Because again, like, what you're really doing is defining, like, where you really want to be is the work gets defined. As we said last year, first year. I don't think we said this one last year. As we said last week, was like, it's services or software. And like, almost the job is to build like the custom software that delivers this service instead of humans doing it. Because that's the point at which it gets about as cheap as it's going to be. And so your job as the human in the loop is to figure out why it's going wrong, why it's not running perfectly, and then just to keep iterating on that until it gets better and better and better towards that sort of goal. And that might not be something that you can ever really get to. There's always going to be bits that you move around it. So, but what does that mean? I mean, the bits that...
I mean, does that model persist as well? Like, at some point, do you need the human as the service interface? I don't know. Depends what it is, I guess.
I don't know. I mean, not necessarily for the service to be delivered. Like, I think, as we've said many times, I think the human's job is to figure out that something's not right. It's to, like, experience something and then desire change. Like, which is so wanky, right? But it's kind of like, I think that's the only thing that gets left, because there's something that goes, oh, we should automate that. Maybe the AI can do it, but it just doesn't really have the same drive. Like, trying to get AIs to have drive and momentum is it's actually hard. Like, they don't, they just stop. You know, they lie, they stop, they work around stuff. They're kind of funny like that. That's why you don't want too much AI. You want just enough to keep it going.
It's the Goldilocks approach to...
I don't know if this is useful at the moment though, but like, where to make it more real, like the bit that I've been focusing on a lot more this week is that more, okay, so what I want to do and what we want to do is have businesses that run. And then our job is to oversee the business and to go, all right, let's go do that business next, or let's go do this one next. Not that we have to then push every button along the way. And in doing that, I've kind of arrived at this concept of like scopes that we talk about. And a scope is a scope a hierarchy? Like, no. Like, I can't imagine having like a HR scope. That just doesn't, I don't see the need for HR. But I would have a scope which is software maintenance, which is like, all right, I've built a bunch of stuff and I keep adding to it, and I want it to not explode in complexity. So there is work to be done, which is that we have to continually review this and eliminate the complexity. And trying to do that in the same scope as adding new features doesn't work. So I'm like, all right, I've got two scopes for my software development here. There's the scope that adds new features and helps me define it. And that might have a couple of subscopes if I want them around like architecture and design and discussion, and another one around implementation. But then if I do that almost abstractly. I just do that. And then overnight, another scope kicks off and it's like, all right, I'm the guy that's going to come tidy all this shit up, sort of thing. And you go, and then you might spend a bit more time in that scope, and then you go back to the other one. But they're like two distinct things that I'm like, these are, as part of other stuff, we do software development, and we need this other thing called tidy up, and then this other thing which is like a constant security review and audit system. So that there's 3 bits there that are all part of like how you would build something. And then maybe there's another one around like, I don't know, research, market research and access. And these are all things that we need for the business to run. And so each gets a scope. But they feel quite abstract to a standard organizational hierarchy. Right, there's no, all right, Andy, you're going to be head of HR and deal with all the HR stuff. It's like, well, I mean, for a start, we don't have any HR stuff. So it'd be
Good job.
Quite easy. Well done. We've successfully eliminated all HR complaints by not having any people. But it's like, there's no, like, I still think, like, why define the organisation around those components? Because you don't need to put people in roles necessarily. So one person can span multiple roles, and it's this concept of like, okay, I as a person am going to might be involved in 20 different scopes. And in any scope, I've got a set of agents that are doing all the work. I come in and oversee it, and so I will want reports and approvals and workflows that run inside those scopes, and I can see it happening. And then when it fails, I can drill in and deal with it. And that's sort of I think that makes sense. And it's been working for me. I feel pretty comfortable now that this is a workable model of like, we've got work, we've got documentation, we've got reports, we've got approvals, and they all flow out of Wingmen into the flight deck system. And then we categorize them via scopes. Even more so than projects. Projects don't quite make sense at the same level. Sometimes I'll take like a development project and split it down. So it's almost like a different slice on the whole thing. But like there's this operational view of the business, which is just what is happening right now, what's coming up, and like what do I need to approve, and what do I need to unstick, and what's going wrong. And I feel like this scopes concept works nicely for that. And then it's almost like the flows of like the documented, like this is how we do stuff. This is like the new standard operating procedure, which is like it's a step-by-step guide that you can give, that a human can read and an agent can read, and it gets the job done. Then any one of those can have software or whatever it needs internally.
Each one of those are not competing with another one though. They can like, you can essentially put these jobs on rails and run them, like the stuff that you were talking about overnight, or market research. Let's just say in one role that I might have inside a business, I would have to do that, and I'd have to do like some marketing, and I'd have to do like some outreach and some cold call. Like, there's like 10 other things I have to do. So I'm not doing the market reach at the same time every day for the same amount of time and pulling in those insights. I'm doing it when I can during the week. All of a sudden, that's the stuff that compounds really effectively, because this stuff is just running all the time.
Well, it also will run out as well. Because you're like, well, I mean, how much market research can you do?
Done.
It's done.
It's done.
And then you'd be like, all right, well, I'll top it up. I'll top it up every 2 weeks or so.
You can change the cadence and go, like, just look for new stuff next month instead of every day.
I think that's maybe another one of these, like, management primitives that you've got, which is, like, the scheduling and the cadence. Is that, you kick off and you go, right, okay, well, let's say I've got a bunch of projects. I want to go and document them all. This is one I did recently. Was like, okay, overnight, just go document everything, and then I want it presented in this manner. I want to keep it up to date. But you get to a point where it's like, okay, I'm not changing that project anymore, so I don't need to document that one. So stop doing that. It's not helpful for me. It's just more noise. And so you have your scopes, you have your flows, then you have these like scheduled cadence of like, when am I going to do what inside the business? Like these all make sense to me as kind of primitives, but none of them are like teams. So, the closest to the team concept, I think, is the scope. Because I think a scope involves like a set of like work instructions that live inside that scope. There's tasks, there's documentation, there's people, there's chats that can be associated with the scope. Yeah, like that's probably the closest thing, which I think is pretty similar to what I was seeing in sort of Jack's stuff around developing these pods, where it's like you basically have like individual contributors, and then you have like the responsible person. And I think there was like a team sort of, it's kind of like a coach, but also you do a lot of work yourself. That's the way it was, which makes sense. And I could see, I mean, I think everyone's got to have a bit of a sort of management coaching sort of vibe to them, because I think that's how you do any of the work with the agents, is that even if you are like an individual contributor, your contributions aren't going to be directly coming from you. It's more likely to be the management of a team of agents.
Yeah, interesting.
So I think you end up with just organizations being more formed around like the outputs and the work that they do. So we used to talk about this a bunch in like enterprise architecture work, where you would say you have like your value stream, and then you have your supporting business functions. And often the supporting business functions would be as big as the value stream. I think that all just goes away. And I think you really just have a very tight-knit company that just runs the value stream, which is why I think I've always maintained that like that's the important bit of a business, is it's the what do you take in and what do you transform it into that somebody else finds useful. And then everything that you need to do to get from the input to the output is overhead. And so you're going to collapse as much of that as you can, but that thing that remains will be unique, and it's the how do you do it. And that's why it would be why I would buy like, you know, this West Australian widget versus the South Australian widget, for instance. And it's because this company has got like a unique source, and that's the thing that is the thing that you can't necessarily replicate, because you don't know how it's done it. And it has encoded all that into software so it runs as quick as it can run. That strikes me as like that becomes like the unit of what an AI is, if you know what I mean, in the world. So it doesn't all aggregate into OpenAI, because OpenAI don't know the best way to run everything. They can't respond to local market needs. It's the old like economic information argument from Hayek, I think, where it's like communism doesn't work because you don't have perfect information about anything. There's like an information argument here to say you don't know why the price of bananas has gone up because of like whatever weather or local disagreement or, you know, insects, plague or whatever. All you can do is respond to the price of bananas, and then you start to work around it inside your own sphere of influence. And it's that distributed cognition that makes everything work. And so the idea of just like, I think we have this capacity to go like, oh no, but the computers are smarter now, so they'll make it work. And I think it's just an unsolvable problem. It's like you can't be a computer smart enough, because you can never know better than a distributed computer how that works. And the distributed cognition is just businesses and people around the world responding inside their own area of speciality. So if you're, by definition, if you're this one centralized entity, you are not a specialized entity that knows this thing. So therefore AI actually does collapse into these small units, which effectively just look like hyper-optimized businesses. With no HR department.
Yes. Lost my job immediately.
Sorry.
I think that makes sense.
That's where I expected to go, and I think they're made up of the scopes, which basically map to the value creation structure. And so, in anything that's not value creation, I think you should probably be. It should just be software and bots. It shouldn't basically not exist.
Yes.
And potentially you can get it from somewhere else cheaper.
Yeah, that role then becomes like part judgment, part taste, part strategy, part relationships. You know, that is humans leaning into being more human in some respect. It's quite good. But you're right. Yeah, you kind of need that architectural mapping of each of these
Do you want
business
to
processes.
expand on that a little bit? Like the humans being more human.
The humans being more human.
Hmm.
Oh, I just think like in that, like you're talking about these information flows being surfaced by all of the wingmen into the flight deck. Like it's being surfaced to you,
Yes.
and that's the space in which you get to exercise a lot of that judgment. But also, like you're also, it's also a taste-making exercise because you're able to shape exactly the direction, the output, the mechanism around how that value is being delivered inside the business and for like a customer. And so that is essentially taste making. And that's where like I think that you get these like subtle differences across each of these little companies. So you still like end up with like competition, I think, quite a lot of it. And you know, like it's not just everyone's getting smaller and fighting harder. I just think that like judgment and taste making is the bit that, and even the relationship networking part of it is how you differentiate in that space. You don't need to have these like multiple billion-dollar companies at that point because you are doing well enough based off of your own judgment, based off of your own domain expertise, based off of your taste, and your relationships to be able to build a really durable and sustainable business around that.
I mean, I think it's not like necessarily the billion-dollar businesses sort of thing. It's kind of like why global?
Yeah.
Like again, by definition, like the global company is like knows your situation worse than the local version, and then you say, oh, but they've got all the best engineers, and it's like not anymore. Like, or they've got all the the best researchers, and it's like, yeah, not so much anymore. Like there's got to be like some privileged thing that they've got to make it worth going there. I think for the most part, really, it's kind of a proxy type thing, which is that we proxy a lot of brand stuff through these global things. We go, oh, they're big enough. It's like that nobody ever got fired for hiring IBM. It's like, well, they certainly should have done. Yeah. But like whether they did or not, then who knows? But I think that can be overcome by just proof of work, and like, you know, I could just always go to this company because they do stuff, but then at some point of being undercut by somebody locally that you can talk to, I think.
Well, they're a bit faceless, those businesses, right? That's the problem.
By definition, that's what I have to be.
Exactly. So, and we tend to have like some aversion to the faceless. We can't really trust them. So you're always going to try, like if there's an opportunity for you and I to work together, we're going to do that rather than go to like McKinsey. You know, McKinsey is just a big faceless beast. Like, and in the past, maybe they offered you some degree of insurance, you know. And again, a lot of that insurance is like, okay, what doesn't necessarily propel the company in the direction we want to send it, but what ensures I don't lose my job if this fucks up?
Well, I think also big companies buy big companies, right? So the necessitation of like big companies is that they need to buy other big companies because otherwise, like they're not big enough to serve your big company. And so if everybody's firing less staff and becoming a smaller company, well then you instantly think, okay, well, you're already starting to, like, I think when we talk about these things, like, we're talking about more of an end state of where it's going, not necessarily, like, where it's going to be in 6 months.
Yeah, exactly.
But, I mean, could be that this is a matter of years in my mind.
I think it's always...
Could be years, could be, like, 10 years.
It's always slower than we think.
Yeah.
Because there are
slower
just...
than we think.
That's true.
Faster than a lot of other people think.
That's true, too, yeah. Because there is just, like... this generational divide as well, right? I mean, I think of people who are like, I don't know, north of 50. You know, they have those relationships do exist inside all of these, you know, big companies. That's not going to, that will just die out, I think. You know, they will keep relying on the people they know and until they're all of kind of retirement age, and then it starts, that part of the economy just starts to disappear, and it's increasingly replaced by, I think, what we're describing. But there is probably like some natural evolution that needs to occur, and maybe it is like a decade.
I mean, we have this like big demographic shift of all the boomers retiring.
Yeah.
Hopefully they'll give up the reins of power sometime soon. Like, and then we can go back to not having constant wars for a while.
Yes, that would be nice.
But Yeah, that was a weird evening. For whoever. Yeah, no, let's not get into all the war stuff. Yeah, like
This is the good stuff.
This is the good stuff, not
The
the
war
bad
stuff
not
is
the
a
bad
different
stuff. That's
podcast.
the bad stuff podcast. You need. Okay. This is not even other stuff. This is bad. I don't know. What were we talking about there? We've had one of those moments where we just
The
forget.
boomers.
Yeah,
The boomers retiring.
Yeah, I mean that could be the sort of like shift that's enough of a shift to because that's supposed to be like a big deflationary force. You need something to deal with that. Well, maybe it's just that
It frees up a lot of capital
fine
as well.
because we have robots and AIs and we just crack on.
Yeah.
But I mean, I still think there's nothing that we're discussing that's making me change my mind here about. I think what the AI does is it focuses you more on like that value stream. Yeah, but I think the thing that I find hard with someone like Block is it's just like, well, it doesn't. There's so much stuff that you're doing that just seems like you are like they just look like 7 businesses, you know, and they kind of are. And so maybe that's what happens to larger companies, is they just become groups of businesses that then you go, well, why not just spin these out? Why do they all need to be under the same group? Because at some level, like Tidal is probably worse for being under Block than just being Tidal, like Spotify is, or something like that. Or not, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
I mean, there's a whole other question there around like whether or not like, you know, it's like what's the treatment of these publicly listed companies as well, and what's the advantage of being in a group versus being split up on their own, and then you've got to look at, well, what's the cap table like of that group? I'm sure they probably see some like collective benefit of having all of that on the balance
that's
sheet.
probably true. A lot of it may just come down to good old corruption and unfair business practices, right? Which is maybe that's an aggressive way of saying that, but it's kind of what public markets are. Is just like, let's just have this unfair playing area where if you're big, you get more access to money and capital and stuff by dint of being big. I mean, it feels like a lot of our society is built around. Yeah. Just if you're rich and big, then we'll bend over backwards to do everything for you, and will not help anybody saying something unique and small. But that's again is for a different podcast.
Well, it's funny because I was just that had like maybe some. I was listening to Lynn Alden on what's his name?
McCormick,
Pete McCormick's podcast. Guy, I listen to way too many podcasts. I had some echoes of that conversation a little bit creeping in. Good pod. When I see Lynn, I click play. But yeah, I don't know. I think to some degree this stuff it's balance sheet strength. That's probably like how it was perceived at the time. Let's just hoard a few of these businesses together, and you know, Block's not the only company doing that. That's quite a common thing. But you know, again, it's like the question is for like even a medium-sized business. It's like, okay, what do you need the capital for? Are public markets the best place to go and get the capital? There's like a bunch of follow-on questions, and then even with the boomer scenario, it's like that's going to free up a lot of capital as well. Like, what does that do to, you know, not just public market? I mean, you'd see a lot of that money potentially flow back into public markets, but like, what does that do for entrepreneurship and starting more businesses? Like, presumably, like people will take more risk as that capital.
I think you have to as well, because like the flow-on effect of people losing jobs and these big companies downsizing is a lot of people that weren't expecting to start companies aren't able to get jobs. Yeah. You know, if you're in an area where your job is being stopped in one large tech company because of like just, you know, reasons outside that company, it's true for the next large tech company. So your job category is going. I think similar at some point you mentioned like overhearing lawyers talk and trying to be like the one lawyer that's left who knows AI and stuff, and it's like, well,
it was fascinating.
But if the category starts to disappear, then it's.
But you know what was interesting in that conversation was like not the animus wasn't necessarily to be able to use this to do their job. Again, it was how do I prevent myself from getting fired? You know, this is the same as like the guy, like the manager going and hiring McKinsey. You know, this is like, the animus isn't necessarily like, how do we go and get the best possible thing here? It's what's going to save my butt if this goes wrong.
Yeah.
And that's, yeah, the two, like there's an element of human nature just baked into this as well, you know.
Yeah.
But they're not necessarily exploring it. And I mean, they were kind of looking at just getting everyone on Claude Cowork. Well, okay, interesting. It's probably useful in some respect. I'm sure it's going to help speed up a bunch of things that lawyers do. Is this the optimal approach for AI inside of a law firm? I don't know. Maybe it is just useful. Maybe it's not. My gut feel is that it's not.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is interesting that was the rationale that they kind of landed on. Again, I wasn't in this conversation. It was just one I overheard while I was having my morning coffee. It was fascinating. And it was very much around how do I position myself so I'm not the one that's going to get fired.
Yeah, it's kind of that first step of the process, though, of going, like, I think the process goes something along the lines of, like, oh, I need to be the one that takes advantage of this to keep my job, to, like, then, which was, like, because you've seen this in tech as well, like, everybody adopts it, and they go, oh, the category is kind of going to disappear. And then eventually you go, all right, so there is no job doing this. And then you go, so what's the next? So what do I go and do? And I just think that will play out on a bunch of areas. I mean, in some ways, I feel it's a bit like, personally, I feel like a bit like I fire myself ahead of time to go like, all right, well, this category is going to disappear. I should probably fire myself and figure out what the next thing is. But I'll be like a year before everybody else, or a few years before everyone else. So then, for when everybody else is dealing with this, I'll be ahead of the game, and I'll do all right.
Yeah.
Whether that's the best approach to these things or not is to be seen. But
Yeah, I mean, there's personal circumstance in that as well, right?
But
people have mortgages to pay and whatnot. So there is that.
That's, I mean, yeah, that's going to be a major issue. That's like the major societal issue, is that we're not set up for people to go through this. Like a lot of people to go through this structure quickly.
At the same time, yeah.
But then, like, the same was true of the Industrial Revolution as well, right? Like, so people will go through it, things will change. In the changing, there's a lot of opportunity as well as a lot of chaos. And then it's going to come down to, like, your capability as an individual as to, like, well, do you end up with more opportunity or more chaos? There's not, I don't know if there's too much you can do about that.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like a great, like, law is like the service as a software opportunity of a lifetime to some degree. You know, especially if you've got that deep domain expertise, like, you can really go and establish quite a strong business. There is also, like, an art form to rainmaking in law as well. Like, there is, like, that brand aspect getting bigger firms is still very much a factor. There's, like, that local competition amongst firm brand names that does exist. But then, even then, like, a lot of times there's one powerful individual inside the firm that is the rainmaker that just has all the relationships and they bring in all the business. I mean, that is archetypally something that is law. We've built so many TV shows around this.
I mean, it could be that, like, big law goes away.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean? And, like, we have more
smaller
law
firms.
Law firms, and people do get more legal advice on stuff.
Yeah.
Things that might be more interesting to lawyers as well, if you know what I mean. Like, it's,
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of the stuff which is just consulting, like databases and previous case law and things, are not the exciting bits of law.
Yeah.
And maybe people will be quite happy to, like, give that up, like, actually focus on what they can do that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because, like, I like, there's so many people in the world that would just never consult a lawyer because it's just too goddamn expensive.
Yeah.
But if it's $50, you might be like, yeah, cool. And is that a lawyer that's working heavily with AI? Probably. But it could be a really good one that's working with AI. And you're like, you know, that's really good advice. I wouldn't have ever thought to come to you about this.
Like anything, it's the problem that's being solved to some degree as well. Like, if you're building a dam, you know, you need some legal around that. That's probably still going to be quite valuable to some degree. There's a lot of complexity that gets wrapped up into that. And yeah, those guys are probably going to use AI to do a lot of that work, and it's probably not going to be worth what it was 10 years ago. But that's okay. There's still going to be a need for that kind of stuff. I do think the knowledge management piece is going to be really valuable for a law firm, like any professional services firm, because you've got a whole heap of client context and knowledge there that is really useful. You've got a whole heap of precedent. You've got all the artifacts you create inside the business.
Well, I think it becomes one of these bits that remains, if you know what I mean. Like there's the scope of the business is one or more things that need to be done. So you could have a business that just does one thing, and we could have a business that's going to do 1,000 things. And like Block is closer to the 1,000 things. But I think even in its own internal structure, what it's going to be is effectively 1,000 businesses under one big group structure. And then, like in any of those quote unquote businesses, which I kind of define as like almost being there's a difference on what's the scope and what's
the scopes? Yeah.
The scopes I think are probably a lower level in our flight deck parlance. It's the workspaces.
Yeah.
We would say like, all right, we would have a different workspace for off-piste, and we would have a different workspace for the good stuff. We'd have a different workspace for just general of stuff thinking sort of thing, and then they would all have their own scopes because they're different mind spaces and things that we're inhabiting, if you know what I mean. But like at that workspace level, there's like, okay, this is a business that does these things, and these things are the outputs of this business.
Yeah.
And like, is it associated with this one? Well, maybe we do those things. So it's kind of like But I think one of the things you need is like there's a bunch of like information and data around the good stuff, which needs to exist. So there's a knowledge management component of that. And there's a knowledge management component of, say, off-piste, but they're not necessarily
the
same.
No.
I don't think they are. And I think that's like where you start to go like, okay, so maybe that's the line.
Yeah, you also wouldn't want them to be the same.
Well,
there might be some elements that overlap, but you can always embed those.
Well, I think that's the difference almost between like the public open source data and the internal data of the business. There's a Three Little Pigs thing going on. Is it Three Little Pigs? No, Goldilocks. Goldilocks is the one after. Yeah, there's a Three Little Pigs. Is what's going to happen is a wolf is going to eat your business.
It's mixing all of the nursery rhymes.
Sorry, it was Goldilocks is the one I was after. Yeah. They're too hot. Three bears.
Yeah, that's
bears
three bears.
Yeah. So it's like you want the just right amount of information.
Yeah.
Like too much information will confuse. It's like you get this in context management of agents. Like you give them too much, they're confused. You give them too little, they're confused. You need to give them just enough information to do what they need to do, and then stop as soon as they've done it, and then do it again.
And also weighting the information based on relevance and like what it actually needs to know based on what it's trying to do. And like if you're using RAG and you've just got a bunch of docs inside of a folder like that, and how do you establish like the weight it should be applying to like a paragraph in one document that it might actually need but can't get to? So those are interesting things to solve. I think inside of a law firm that's really valuable too, because like this is the bit I think lawyers complain about the most. It's like we can't have these agents working on like client-related matters because they bullshit too much. Well, it's because they don't have the right
it's a context management problem more than it. That's not an unsolvable problem.
Exactly.
In the same way, it's not unsolvable for humans to not bullshit.
Yeah.
Because humans also lie.
Yes.
When they don't know enough.
Hence why we have lawyers.
So it's probably therefore you've spent less time training your agents than you have training your lawyers. So, like, what does law school for agents look like, for instance?
Yeah.
Like, how would you take somebody through this? How do you get them to develop these skills? But then realizing that once you do that, you probably never have to do it again.
Yeah. But then it's also like, do you want to abdicate that stuff to a third-party vendor that is, like Harvey? Do you want to use like a Harvey that works for everyone?
I don't think Harvey can do that as well as a law firm can.
That's it. Yeah, you want to do this for yourself.
This is why I think it always collapses back to the business. The reason you are the business is because you do understand what you're doing.
Yep.
And we can tell you understand what you're doing because you're profitable in the world, unless you have some sort of government contract that just stands you up regardless.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. But if you are competing in a free market broadly and you're making money, you are useful by definition to other people, more so than the money that they've got. Therefore, there's something there that's correct, and that's the thing that you can then automate and own. But I also think like it's going to be almost impossible. Like other people will come in And say, and like, you know, people say, oh, you know, why don't you go after like this market? It's like, 'cause I don't know it.
Yeah.
It's like, so the question is, can I learn it quick enough and then bring in these tools
Yeah.
to overtake the people that are already there, or can they learn these tools quicker than I can? We talked yesterday about the Venn diagram that never meets. It's like saying, look, there's people that really love the tech and can do stuff with it, and then there's people that really understand a certain business context and how it works. And if those two things are overlapping, and people that in the overlapping space are going to be the ones that take advantage of this. So you can be like the person in this particular industry context that also understands enough the text, you're going to be very valuable. You can go and be a person from like the tech space that can find somebody to work with that really understands the business, and that could work. And then I think you just have the people where there's whole business areas where they're just not interested in this at all and aren't really thinking about it.
Yeah.
And they are just great targets.
Giving away all the
as we've talked about. I think we've talked about this for a year.
We have, yeah.
Luckily, this podcast appears to be the best place to hide these ideas.
Apparently, yeah.
But at least if we say it out loud, then at least our agents learn it.
That's
it's all about training the agents.
We've got a good context management system going on.
It's like, how do you hide all of your best ideas? Well, I record them all weekly into a podcast and give it away for free, thus ensuring that nobody ever becomes aware.
And we've saved it right to the very end of the pod, so that's
exactly. So for the 4 people,
it's well hidden.
Shout out to the friends of the pod.
Yes, thank you.
Say hello in the comments.
Happy birthday.
Like and subscribe. Say happy birthday. But I think, that's the thing. It's the Venn diagrams that don't meet. You need to understand the thing. That's why it collapses back to those value chains. But it's that value chain that is unique, because it's unique in your particular circumstance, in the world, in your market, in your economy, like in your geography, like whatever it is. Like there's a reason why you do what you do where you do it.
Yeah.
And like that's the bit that doesn't go away just because AI.
Yeah, it's the judgment
you
bit.
just use the AI. So be unique. Maybe that's the answer.
Yeah. Again, leaning into being human.
Yeah.
You know, that's you exercising judgment, you exercising taste, and you using the tools to create leverage with those. Lean into being human.
And I think we'll absolutely see more people again wanting, like, people are going to want to buy from people.
Yeah.
We see this so much where there's like pushback against AI slop.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have this sort of intuition in the sense I don't think AI is just slop. It's not like a binary thing. I think you can decide like what you do with it. And like something that's being done carelessly was always slop anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you know, I get more sloppy emails where I'm like, this is clearly an AI writing to me.
Yeah.
Did I used to get spam emails where I was like, this is clearly just somebody that doesn't care writing to me, or it's just one email. It's like, yeah. It's like nothing. But even we already lived in a world of slop.
Exactly.
Like all like
the slop already exists.
Social media for the last. Social media had so much promise. It was such a good thing, and the concept of this is still great. Like peer-to-peer stuff and peer-to-peer communication and connection is great. That is not what social media is.
Yeah, but it had to be global.
In these large companies, they turned it into a global influencer culture. Yeah. That is not social media. That is watching telly on your phone.
Yeah,
that's what they took something that was called social media and said, I will replace it with watching telly on your phone. What you should do is go and engage in social media, which is when you fucking talk to people about things on the internet. But they're not the same thing just because Facebook still does it, or because it's Instagram. Instagram is a broadcast platform for smaller people than networks to just get you to watch telly on your phone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the use of AI doesn't necessitate that it's slop. I actually don't mind when people write emails to me using AI, because often it just means like you're communicating better.
They can often be a bit better.
It depends. Like if someone's just sending out a bunch of spam emails, then sure, but that always existed.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's not the AI that made it slop. It was the human and the amount of fucks they gave.
It's like the M dash. It's like I actually quite like M dashes. Like I've used M dashes my whole life.
Yeah.
And like that was one of the things that I was quite annoyed about. I was like, oh, now everyone's going to think every time I use an M dash, it's AI, and I'm like,
Well, you don't.
yeah. And but yeah, it's one of those things where just because someone's using AI doesn't mean it's slop, but yeah, the slop already existed. It was already a problem.
It's like I will get an AI to write an email and then I will make it borderline sweary.
Yeah.
Because I care. And I want you to know that it's come from me and how I would talk.
Well, you see these like posts and stuff that sounds like commas and full stops and like there's no grammar whatsoever. Like I'm just going to write in lowercase everything as well, and this is like a way to try and stand out and make yourself appear human. It's just, it's interesting that that's the extreme you need to take. Makes your writing even more difficult to read, but okay, let's make that
exactly.
the human standard.
I just
for
want
this.
good content. I don't really
Yeah,
care.
exactly.
If your AI gives me good content, I don't really want to care that it's an AI or not.
Yeah.
It's not that content's the wrong word as well. It's not I necessarily want content. I've got, like, I feel like I filled up like about 8 years ago. Stuff like it's just, I'm kind of done as like, but I would like to talk. Like I would like to have better discussions with people and explore ideas and do things.
Yeah.
More than that.
Yeah, without the bots.
Well, no, with the bots, I don't mind. Like, it doesn't bother me that if I could have a really, I was going to say, like, maybe if I could just have the same conversation, but I'm talking to a bot instead of you, Andy, for instance. It's pretty untrue.
Thanks, man.
No, actually. There's a reason. There's a reason why there's two humans in the business, right? Like it's.
I will stand by that.
That is by
the
design.
reason you don't want the bots is for the same reason that Twitter is annoying to go on these days. It's like everyone is just like essentially engaged in some degree of warfare, and the problem is like everyone that's like so many people who are engaged in this warfare are not actually people. They're just bots, and these are essentially being used to like sway opinions on like a mass scale. So I don't know. I'd argue that you probably don't need that. If you've got like a version of like Wingman on Nostr or Lara on Nostr, that's a bit different.
Yeah, exactly. My point is that.
But
Twitter is not social media. Twitter is just yet another TV on your mobile delivered in small forms of text that is optimized to be like a global way of pushing bots at you. Like whether they're bots or people, like, it's not necessarily a better opinion because it's Ben Shapiro, because he's a person. I'd rather hear a bot than that guy, for instance. So it doesn't like, and I will have like a discussion with like sometimes on Nostr I'll go, oh, this is a bot. That was a good point.
Yeah.
So I'll answer it and see what comes back. And it doesn't bother me that it's an AI. It would bother me that it's like. I think it's just a shame that like social media was taken and broken in that way, and I would suspect possibly by design. Maybe more. I don't know. Maybe it's incentive. Maybe it's design. Either way, we should probably fix it because it was a good thing to have peer-to-peer communication and communities that could talk to each other more freely. That's how you increase peace in the world. Like, what it's been turned into these days is just it's like we went back to control and broadcast stuff, which is a shame.
There we go.
We got to finish on
We
a
got to
brighter
have
note.
an optimistic note.
For the birthday.
Yes.
I think the optimistic note for me is that there is a lot of opportunity here.
Yeah.
And the opportunity is in businesses are going to be redefined to some extent. And then in the doing of that, you have the opportunity to define your own businesses and to go and do stuff that you couldn't have previously done.
Chaos is a ladder.
All right. That's the good stuff. Happy birthday.